Hey guys, welcome to the next tutorial of ethical hacking and penetration testing via KaliLinux. So in this tutorial, we will be discussing about the SQL injection. So in this tutorial, I'll discuss in detail about the common SQL injection technique as it applies to the popular Microsoft Internet Information Server or the active server pages, SQL Server platform, and more. It discusses the various ways in which SQL can be injected into an application and address some of the data validation and database lockdown issues that are related to this class of attack. This tutorial is intended for both developers of web applications, and you can go ahead and communicate with databases with security professionals, and it will be very easy for you to go and audit your own websites after this. So to start with SQL, the full form is a structured query language. I'll explain in detail to you later on as to how we can actually go ahead and use that in our KaliLinux as a later point of time. So SQL, or a structured query language, it is a textual language used to interact with relational databases. There are many varieties of SQL and most of them are common to use such as at the moment, and they're loosely based around SQL 92. The most recent is the ANSI standard. The typical unit of execution of SQL is the query, which is the collection of statements that typically return a single result. SQL statements can modify structures of databases using data definition language statements, or it is also called as DDL. They can even manipulate the contents of the databases using DML, that's data manipulation language statements. And in this tutorial, I'll be specifically discussing about the transact SQL, the dialect of SQL used by the Microsoft SQL Server, which we will go ahead and later use through our KaliLinux with the help of SQL map to go ahead and penetrate into different types of websites. So SQL injection occurs when an attacker is able to insert a series of queries or SQL statements into a query by manipulating the data into an application. It might be a bit hard for you to understand that right now, but it's not that hard, trust me. A typical SQL statement looks like, let me just open my notepad and I'll show it to you. So a typical data statement would look like select ID, or it can be like forename, or it can be like surname, or it can be like surname from authors. That means it will go and select all the surname from authors. So you might be wondering, it's quite easy, right? No, it's not that much easy. This statement will retrieve the ID, forename, and surname columns from the authors table, returning all rows in the table. So the result set could be restricted to specific authors like this. If you want to search any kind of specific people, then you could go ahead and search something like this: surname, select ID, forename, surname from authors, where forename, where is the condition over here, and the forename should be John, let's say, for example, and surname would be equal to, let's say, Diggle. So it will be something like this. It will go and select all the ID which has a forename of John and a surname with Diggle, John Diggle. So that's how it will work. So an important point to note here is that the string levels or string retrievals John and Smith are delimited with single quotes. Presuming that the forename and surname fields are being gathered from the user supplied unit, an attacker might be able to inject some SQL into this query by inputting values into the application. So one could do something like forename equals to JO query N, and you can type surname equals to Diggle. So you can do something like this. So this query string then goes ahead and becomes like, you need to go ahead and search over here, but over here there would be an extra apostrophe like over here in John. So when the database attempts to run this query, it will 100% return an error, because it will go ahead and check that John has three quotes over here, which it will not accept, because it will either accept this specific as one forename or this specific as one forename, but it cannot go ahead and read a single word which has 3 quotes in it. So the reason for this is that insertion of single quote character, it breaks out the single quote delimited data. The database then tries to execute HN and failed. If the attacker specified input like this, let's say for example, I'll show you one more thing, and he can go ahead and do something like drop table authors hyphen and surname would be blank. If he goes ahead and inserts this thing, the authors table will be deleted, and I'll go into deep into that later on as to how it works. But it will be deleted, and it would seem that some method of either removing single quotes from the input or escaping them in some way would handle this problem. This is true, but there are several difficulties with this method as a solution. First, not all your supplied data is the form of strings, and if our user input could select an author by ID, presumably a number for example, our query would look different. It would look something like, let me just go down and select, it would do something like select ID, forename, surname from authors where ID equals 21234. So in a situation, an attacker can simply append the SQL statements at the end of this specific numeric input, and once that is done, the attacker can easily go ahead and access things that you cannot even imagine. And in other SQL dialects, various delimiters are used, but in Microsoft JetDBMS, that's Database Management System Engine, for example, the date can be delimited with a single pound character. The second thing is that escaping single quotes is not necessarily the simplest cure it might initially seem, but for reasons I'll go into that later as well. So I will illustrate these points in further detail by using a sample active server pages, that's ASP login page, which accesses a SQL server database and attempts to authenticate access to some fictional application. So this is just a simple technique from my end so that people can actually go ahead and see how much their website is vulnerable. So attackers normally go ahead and inject these queries into the URL. So anything over here that can be inserted through the internet or the intranet is dangerous. This is the way how they go ahead and inject and destroy different types of databases. And trust me guys, it's not even a bit secure, because if the person who's actually going ahead and trying to access your let's say system by using an SQL injection, he can straight away go ahead and get multiple usernames and along with the passwords and the databases, and once he goes ahead and gets that, he can go ahead and gather any kind of information, everything from their birth date to their card numbers depending upon which website do you have and everything. So yeah, that's how it works, and that's it guys for this tutorial. In the next tutorial I'll be continuing in depth with the SQL injection. Hey guys, welcome to the next tutorial of ethical hacking and penetration testing via KaliLinux. So in the previous tutorial I taught you exactly how SQL injection works. So before I proceed, I'll start with a bit of what things are included in that, and then I'll show you exactly how you can go ahead and penetrate into some or the other website. And as of now I don't have the website with me, since I cannot go ahead and actually inject someone else's website, but I won't be able to go ahead and show you that practically, but I will be showing you what are the things that we need and how it exactly works, so that you have an in-depth knowledge as to when you want to inject someone else with this SQL query, you'll know exactly what to do. So to start with, SQL injection is just a code injection technique, and it is used to attack data-driven application in which malicious SQL statements are inserted into an entry field for execution. That is example, let's say, to dump the database contents to the attacker. SQL injection must exploit a security vulnerability in the application software. So for example, when user input is either incorrectly filtered or for string literal escape characters embedded in SQL statements, or user input is not strongly typed and unexpectedly executed, SQL injection is most commonly known as an attack vector for websites, but it can be used to attack any type of SQL databases. In this tutorial, I'll show you how to use the SQL map SQL injection on KaliLinux to hack into a website, more specifically a database, and extract the usernames and passwords on KaliLinux. So to start with, what is SQL map? SQL map is an open source feature, or you can say as open source penetration testing tool that automates the process of detecting and exploiting SQL injection flaws and taking over of database servers. So it can be like, for example, if you are browsing something, then you can just go ahead and write some query in the URL of a particular website, and it will take you to that. Let's say, for example, in my company, I had a intranet and I was an IT person over there. So what exactly happened was that every person has their own account, and they could see their own, you can say, as let's say, for example, they could see their own leaves and all those stuff, how many times they were late and how many times they have taken leaves, whether they were present or not, and everything. So each person had their own account and only they can see it was made in that way. But there were some people around who started knowing about everyone else and started complaining to other people's bosses, stating that they have taken leaves, whereas these people were not allowed, and all those stuff. So when I went ahead and checked into that specific application, how they were doing, and they were not even actually any IT people who were actually doing this. They were just a simple 23, 24-year people who had just gotten into the organization with no idea what they were actually doing was SQL injection. So the simplest thing what they did was that my company's URL was like, it was an intranet, and when you go ahead and log into intranet, it will go ahead and show your specific ID on the URL. So what people used to do, people used to go ahead and change only the employee ID code. Let's say, for example, my dummy ID code would be 15093. So if I wanted to check someone else's, so I could just go ahead and check his ID card. Let's say, for example, it's if the other person's ID code is 15095. I would straight away go ahead and insert, only replace that specific ID number with 15095, and it will give me all his details, even if I have not logged in into that account. And that was a bug, and that is what actual SQL injection is. The people over there did not actually even know what they were doing, but still it was SQL injection. So that's how it looks like. So SQL injection, SQL map in KaliLinux, it comes with a powerful detection engine, many features for the ultimate penetration tester, and a broad range of switches lasting from, let's say, data fingerprinting or over data fetching from database to accessing the underlying file system and executing commands on the operating system via out-of-band connections. It can do that, yes. So these are some of the important features of SQL map. I have not written every one of them, but I will be telling you each and every one of them. So it has full support for MySQL, Oracle, PostgreSQL, and Microsoft SQL Server, Microsoft Access, IBM DB2, that's database 2, SQLite, Firebird, Seabase, SAP, Max database management systems, as you can see over here. And SQL support, it provides full support for 6 SQL injection techniques. That's Boolean based blind, time based blind, error based blind, so not error based blind, it's just error based, union queries, stacked queries, and out of band. After that, it also supports to directly connect to the database without passing via an SQL injection by providing database management system credentials, IP addresses, ports, and even a database name. It also supports to enumerate users, password hashes, privileges, roles, databases, tables, and column. It can also go ahead and automatically recognize a password hash format, and it will also provide support. If not only hacking, it will also provide support for cracking them using dictionary based attack. It also has support to dump database tables entirely, or a range of entries or specific columns as per user's choice. It's quite user friendly, and the user can also go ahead and choose to dump only let's say a range of characters from the each column's entry. You can say it also has support to search for specific database names, specific tables all across the database, or specific columns across all database tables. This is useful for, let's say, for instance, when you want to identify tables containing custom application credentials where relevant column names contain a string like name and pass. So it also supports to download and upload any file from the database server underlying file system when the database software is MySQL, PostgreSQL, or Microsoft SQL Server. It has support to execute arbitrary commands to retrieve all of these things, and the standard output on the database server underlying operating system when database software is MySQL, PostgreSQL, or Microsoft SQL Server. It also has support for database processes using user privilege escalation via Metasploit's interpreter get system command. It can support to establish an out-of-band stateful TCP connection between the attacker machine and the database server underlying the operating system. So this channel can be an interactive command prompt such as a interpreter session or a graphical user interface such as VNC session as per the user's choice. So yeah, that's it for that. I don't think I can make it much more clearer than it is already, because this is the simplest thing that I can tell you. So let's start with actually going ahead and gaining some access to some computers or to some databases through MySQL queries. So the first thing that you would have to do is to go ahead and find a vulnerable website. So this is usually the toughest bit and takes longer than any steps. Those who know how to use Google Docs know this already, but in case you don't know just anything, you can just go ahead and search in Google. Just copy paste any of the lines in Google and Google will show you a number of results. So I'll just go ahead and show you a few examples as to how Google works. Let me just show you. If you think that Google is just used for going ahead from one website to another, then you're wrong. I'll just show you one simple example. And just type, let's say for example, if I'll just give you a few examples, such as if I wanted to search, let's say any specific person on Facebook. So this is just an example as to how we can go ahead and use Google Docs. So instead of me going ahead and searching, I can just let's say for example the person's name is Sandy and the last name would be, let's say for example, Smith, Sandy Smith. So or Adam Smith, just to be more precise. I'll just go ahead and select, let's say in text, I'll just go ahead and select Adam, and I'll just go ahead and type, let's say in text, and I'll go ahead and use it as, let's say, or I'll just use inside facebook.com. Let me see if this works. Site rather than insight. Okay, my Chrome is stuck. I'll just go to modify it a bit. So what I should get over here is that everything related to the name Adam on the site facebook.com. I should not get any even a single search more than that. Perfect. So as you can see, I have over here Adam page from facebook.com, and I think these are the only few people from facebook.com. If I had something else, then I could also go ahead and select that. Or I could just type, let's say, you can just type Adam inside facebook.com. It will give me everything related to Adam from, let's say, name or last name or anything from facebook.com. So only if this works. Let me check. That seems to be extremely so. Okay, let's see. Perfect. As you can see, I have Adam page over here, everything related to facebook.com. So this is what I'm trying to explain over here is that Google Docs can help you search all the vulnerable websites. So you don't need to go ahead and actually go ahead and check from website to website as to how you can go ahead and gather any or every other Google information. So that there are a really long list. So I only showed you in text and in site or just site. There are in URL and cache memory files. So the list is quite long, and if I go ahead and write that down, it will take me a long time to go ahead and collect them. So if you know SQL, then you can still go ahead and add more. And Google is very vulnerable to SQL, so you can easily go ahead and search a lot of things only from SQL. So that would be our step one. And the second thing would be we need to go ahead and do an initial check. So initial check would be to confirm if the website is vulnerable to SQL map injection. So but that would be it for this tutorial. In the next tutorial I'll be continuing with the initial check part. Hey guys, welcome to the next tutorial of ethical hacking and penetration testing via KaliLinux. So in the previous tutorial I taught you exactly how we could go ahead and gather information through Google Docs. So in this tutorial I'll be continuing with the first part, and this will be a 2 or 3 part tutorial in total, so just to be specific. So the initial check that we would be doing is that we would be confirming whether the website is vulnerable or not to a SQL map through SQL injection. For every string that I have showed you, you will get hundreds of search results. So you might be wondering, how do you know which is really vulnerable to SQL map injection? There's multiple ways to do that, and I'm sure that people will argue that which one is the best, but to me, I'll be following the simplest and the most conclusive stuff. So what you need to do is that, let's say you have searched a website using in URL colon item underscore ID equals to, and one of the search result will show you a website like http colon SQL dummywebsite.com/cgi/bin and item.cgi or something like that. So just you need to add a single quotation mark at the end of the URL, and just to ensure it is a double quotation mark and it is not a single quotation mark. So now your URL will become something like SQL dummy website .com/cgi/bin item cgi item equals to 15 apostrophe. So if the page returns an SQL error, the page is vulnerable to SQL map injection. So if it loads or redirects you to a different page, move on to the next site in your Google search results page. So you can see example errors over here that I have obscured everything including the URL and the page design for obvious reasons. So these are the errors. Let me see if I have an image that I created last time. Okay, perfect. So I had this specific website that I used, and this was the error that I got. That's dbd mysql db select row. So I'll go ahead and show you specific things as to how we could actually what are the errors that we're going to get and what does it mean exactly. So I'll just go to the previous one. Okay, so if you see this kind of error, so let me check. Okay, this was the website that I was telling you. This, I will assume that this is your website, and just put an apostrophe in the end and it will work. That's what it did to my actually. So these are the errors that you would be getting. So description would be over here for this, that it's an unhandled exception that's occurred during the execution of current web request. Please review the stack trace for information about the error where it originated in the code, blah blah blah, and something like that. So you don't actually need to know much in detail about exactly what this is. So I'll show you different types of error that normally people would get. This is another one, that separate argument is not valid, MySQL fetch array, and yeah, so as you can see, it's in var www myawesomestore.com. That means this var means it is under Linux. If you have an error in SQL syntax, check the manual that corresponds to MySQL server version for the right syntax. That means the people have all the names inside quotes at line 12, and it is vulnerable to multiple quotes. Then we have the Java SQL, this SQL error, SQL command not properly entered at Oracle JDBC database, and yeah, the SQL exception Java Oracle. Okay, perfect. Quoted string not properly terminated. This means that the error was not properly terminated, and some or the other thing, like for example, if you had used C++ or C before, then you know that you need to always go ahead and put a semicolon in the end for the specific command to end. But similarly over here, the specific code was not properly terminated, and that is the reason why we received this error. Then after that we have query failed, that's error unterminated quoted string or at or near. So that means that multiple quotes were there, or there were 3 quotes to start but there were 4 quotes to end. That's why it was not properly terminated. And this is the final one. So let's go ahead and list the database management systems using SQL map SQL injection. As you can see from over here, I have found an SQL map SQL injection vulnerable website. That's this one. Now I need to list all the databases in that vulnerable database. This is called as enumerating number of columns. So as I am using SQL map, I'll tell you also which one is vulnerable. You need to go ahead and run a specific command. This is how it looks like when you go ahead and run the SQL map. This is the specific website and it will show you everything. So in here you need to go ahead and name your SQL map query, and over here I'll just go ahead and show it out to you. Okay, I'll just go back. Perfect. So this is how it will look like. So before you proceed from over here, you need to go ahead and point something. So you need to go ahead and type SQL map over here. It means the name of the SQL binary file, -u when you go ahead and use that over here. That means over here -u is the target URL, which is in case our SQL dummy website.com, and hyphen DBS, it means it's just enumerating database management system databases. So this command will reveal quite a few interesting information. These are the things you will see when you go and run that. Apache backend database MySQL 5.0. Retrieved information scheme, retrieve SQL dummy website, fetch data log to text under user share SQL map output xyz.com or the SQL dummy website.com. This means that he has a Linux or a Unix system. So now we have two databases that we can look into. Information schema, that is a standard database for almost every MySQL database. So we don't need to worry about it. So our interest over here would be on the SQL dummy website database. So let's go ahead and list tables of target database using SQL map, SQL injection. So now we need to know how many tables this SQL dummy website database got and what are the names. So to find the information, we'll be using another command, that is this SQL-u http://dummywebsite.com CGI bin item CGI 15, but after that I will be typing -d SQL dummy website space hyphen tables. So this database will get us these 8 different tables. It's more than 8 obviously, but these are the tables that we will get. That's fetching tables for databases, heuristics detected web page, and so these are the 8 databases that we will be getting. Item, link, other, picture, picture tag, popular picture, popular tag, and user info. And of course, we want to check what's inside the user info table using SQL map injection, as that table probably contains username and passwords. So now coming to the step 4, we need to go and list all the list columns on target table of selected database using SQL map SQL injection. So now we need to list all the columns on the target table user info of SQL dummy website database using SQL map SQL injection. And SQL map SQL injection makes it really easy by us going ahead and running this following command. That's SQL map -u http dummywebsite.com and -d SQL dummy website -t user info columns. So this specific query, when ran, it will give us these specific tables. So that is a user ID, int unsigned, user login, varchar, user password, varchar, user ID. So this is exactly what we're looking for. Target table, user login, and user password. So the next step that we would be doing would be to use or to list usernames from target columns of target table of selected database using SQL map injection. SQL map SQL injection makes this easy. So for us to go and do that, we need to go ahead and run this specific command. That's SQL map -u and blah 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 -d SQL dummy website -t user info -c user underscore login -dump. So when you go ahead and run this, you will be amazed to see what you have got. We will getting the username and from the database. So as you can see, we have retrieved user X, and it will go ahead and analyze the table dump for possible password hashes. So after we go ahead and do that, we need to extract the password from the target columns of the target table of the database using SQL map injection. So you're probably going to get used to how SQL map injection tool is used. And before I go ahead and proceed anything, that would be it for this tutorial. In the next tutorial, we'll be continuing with the gathering the password, and if once we go ahead and get the password, it will not exactly what you would expect it to be. So we need to again go ahead and crack the specific thing that we will be getting, which I'll be showing you into the next tutorial. Hey guys, welcome to the next tutorial of ethical hacking and penetration testing via KaliLinux. So in the previous tutorial, I taught you how we could actually go ahead and get into any random websites if they're vulnerable to SQL injection, and we did that through SQL mapping. So what we did in the previous tutorials were we first found a vulnerable website through Google Dork or via other methods, and then we did some initial checks to confirm whether a website is vulnerable to SQL injection or not. Then I provided you some different examples of what the errors would look like and how they would run exactly. And I finally taught you SQL mapping to go ahead and gather the username and password. So we have the username, but the password won't be the same as we thought. So once you go ahead and gather the website, the SQL query would return one entry, and it would be that this is how it would look like on your Kali system. That just ignore these specific S over here. It's how KaliLinux goes ahead and prints out everything. So once it has retrieved, this is what it's showing as the password. It is analyzing table dump for possible password hashes through SQLW website. So we have one entry for the table user info. This is the user password, but the username is user X as I taught you previously. But we are almost there. We even got the password, but this does not look like the password. We can go ahead and extract the password from target columns of table, target table of state database through SQL map injection. You probably know how we could go ahead and get that rather now, because I taught that in the previous tutorial. But hang on, this password looks funny because this cannot be someone's password, especially someone who leaves their website vulnerable just like that. They cannot have a strong password like that, and trust me guys, this is an extremely strong password if you have this. So that's exactly right. This is a hash password. That means the password is encrypted, and now we need to go ahead and decrypt it. So I have covered on how to decrypt passwords previously, or cracking MD5 using the hashcat and other stuff, PHPBB, MySQL and SHA1 passwords with hashcat on KaliLinux previously. If you have missed that, then you're missing a lot, because if you have not seen those previous tutorials of mine, then you probably won't have that much idea as to what I'm talking about now. But if you have seen that, I will cover it. If you have seen or not, I will surely go ahead and cover it out for you. But you should really learn how to go ahead and use the hashcat. So cracking the password is not that difficult. The hashed password over here is 24IYBC17X KOE or 0, whatever it is. So how do you know what type of hash is that? That's the first thing. So the first thing that we need to do in cracking the password would be to go ahead and identify the hash type. Luckily, KaliLinux provides a nice tool, and we can use that tool to identify which type of hash this is. In command line, in the command prompt, that's the terminal for KaliLinux, you can simply go ahead and prompt paste the hash value. So as soon as you go ahead and paste this specific value in the terminal, this will go ahead and show you exactly what it is. This is a DES Unix hash. So cracking this hash is quite difficult. It's not that difficult unless it's an extremely big password. So cracking this hash, we can go ahead and use our CUDA hashcat to go ahead and download this, to go ahead and crack this. CUDAHASHCAT, CUDA hashcat. That's a tool that we would be using. So first of all, I need to know which code to use for the DES hashes. So let's check that. So in order for us to do that, we need to type CUDA hashcat, that's CUDAHASHCAT -help, and I'll just go ahead and type it out to you and I'll show you. So the password would be something like, I'll just go ahead and increase the perfect. So the terminal we would be typing this in terminal, CUDA CUDA hashcat and -help, and then this specific thing or bar, whatever it is called, grep DES. So as soon as you go ahead and hit enter, it will be showing you that it's either 1500 or 3100, but it was a MySQL database, so it must be 1500. So I'm running a computer that that has an NVIDIA graphics card, so that means I'll be using CUDA hashcat. On my laptop, I have got an AMD ATI graphics card, so I'll be using the OCL hashcat on my laptop. If you're on VirtualBox or VMware, neither will work. You must install Kali in either a persistent USB or in a hard disk to go ahead and actually crack these things, because a graphic card cracks much faster and in much better way. If you have an AMD, you can use OCL hashcat. If you have NVIDIA, you can go ahead and use CUDA hashcat. So I've saved the hash value over here in DS hash file. So the command that I would be running to go ahead and crack our own hash would be CUDA hash cat -m, and since it is a 1500, I'll just type 1500. Since it is in MySQL, -a space 0 and space /root /SQL /des period hash, that is the place where our hash would be, and space /root /SQL /rocku period txt. And if you are wondering what rocku is, that means that you have not seen my previous tutorial in which I have told you that rocku is specifically designed for KaliLinux rainbow table that has n number of or more than even 14 lakh specific passwords or text that can go ahead and help you crack your password. It's a kind of brute force type of stuff. So the interesting thing over here is that usually Hashcat was unable to determine the code for DS hash, and it's not in the help menu. However, both CUDA Hashcat and OCL Hashcat found and cracked the key. So if you have gone through this, if you successfully cracked, then it's good for you. If you have not, then I'll let you know that the password is abcd@123. So not ABCD, it's ABC123. That is the password. So that's the reason it is such an easy password. So that's 24IYBC that I have taught you. So now we have the password for this user, and that's how we can go ahead and crack specific stuffs. So the conclusion for this is that there are many other ways to get into a database or obtain other users' information. You should be able to go ahead and practice these techniques on your websites that you have permission to, and not on any specific thing else. So yeah, that would be it for this tutorial, and that would be the end of SQL injection technique, or how we could go in SQL map. But there are many other SQL tools that are still available in KaliLinux that could go ahead and help you inject different kinds of queries into the database to not only get the user access. Let's say, for example, you got this user access username and password, you went into the database and you gathered all the information that you wanted, and you came back out. So the question over here is that if there is, if you're actually doing this for some reason, and if there is a forensic investigator, that's a CHFI, computer hacking forensic investigator, he will be easily able to find that used, whose ID you used, and what information were there. But if you go ahead and use these SQL queries in proper, you won't even have to use any specific username. You can simply go ahead, get into the database, and get out without even anyone identifying you, who you were exactly, and they won't even have an impression left behind to go ahead and think that if whether anyone was actually there in the system, because they would not even have any specific person gathering all the databases. Especially if you have accessed it through a user, then it would surely be showing that this user has accessed this database. But if there is no user, then whom will they track? That is the question. So that's it for this tutorial. Gather much information as you can about the SQL map and SQL hash queries that you could go ahead from KaliLinux. KaliLinux is a very awesome operating system that could do much more things than just these tutorials of mine. So that's it for this tutorial. Have a nice day ahead.